Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? My name's Corey Sweet, and I am our Policy Systems and Environmental Change Specialist for TENSEP and FDEP. So today we are talking, this is our fourth Monday meetup, and today we're talking about coalitions and partnerships. And we have some really great speakers for you today. I'm just going to jump right into it so that we can get started. So before we get started, I just want to say that these Monday meetup sessions are funded through TENSEP, SNAP-Ed program, and PSE initiatives discussed during these sessions are intended for a TENSEP limited resource audience and meant to be provided at TENSEP SNAP-Ed qualifying sites. So this is our indicia for both extension and SNAP-Ed. We do have some really great upcoming Monday meetups for you all to be aware of. On June 14th, which is our next session, we are talking about leveraging resources and funding for PSE projects. And we have Dr. Jennifer Ward talking about that, and we'll have some other speakers as well. On July 12th, we're talking about the P in PSE, and hopefully that would be policy. And we'll have Dr. Burney talking about the role of extension agents in working with policy, and hopefully give you a better understanding of what that means and how to work with that and how to support some of those healthy changes. In August, we will hold the Monday meetups because of our FCS conference, and then September 13th, I do have some ideas, but holding off, I will announce that soon. And then October through January, we will go ahead and reassess our Monday meetups and get some feedback from you all, make sure they are still going to meet a need in 2022. Just a reminder, you can find all of these on our FCS Classroom and PSE Nutrition Supports, and then you can find all previous Monday meetups as well. Today, we are going to hear from Natalie. She's going to give us a brief introduction, and then we also have Jennifer Trail from the from the Tennessee Department of Health talking about Tennessee Health Councils. We have Megan Brown from Meigs County talking about the Meigs County Coalition, some successes and barriers. I'm not sure if Justin is on the call. I will check. I know he may not be able to make it today. And if not, and we have some time, we might be able to have some time for a little bit of discussion. But we also have Chantal talking about evaluation. So we'll go ahead and get started. Jennifer, I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and that way I can allow you to share your screen. 1 second.
So it's not letting me. Is there a way you can enable it?
Yeah, I just clicked it on, so you should be good to go.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Okay, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to come talk to you all about county health councils. I would love to know if any of you all are already involved in a county health council where you are. If you or your organization is, I would love if you would just like type in your chat what county you are, so I can know if I'm already preaching to some choir members here. But for everyone else, I hope that if you're not, maybe this will get you interested in reaching out to your local county health council. Before I get into the details about our health councils, just wanted to give a quick overview, briefer on the social determinants of health. Many of you are already probably well versed in these, but I like to start here because especially since we're here talking about policy systems and environmental change, those are all required to really move health systems change and address social determinants of health. So you have your traditional picture of health, which might include chronic disease like diabetes and other health conditions. But what we say nowadays, we like to try and move things upstream and address those underlying systemic things that lead to chronic health outcomes later on in life, and those are our determinants of health. So our social and economic factors, things like education, employment, income level, social support, those have a really high influence on determining future health outcomes in a community. And of course, health risk behaviors, access to care, and then just the physical environment around us. All of those health factors lead to health outcomes, and underpinning those health factors are policies and programs that influence them. So I'm starting there to say that traditionally, public health has focused in on preventing mortality, on vaccinations, on addressing chronic disease and health risk behaviors. And those are all super, super important. But we know that there will never be enough money and resources to attack those types of problems on an individual and case-by-case basis. So 21st century public health, also referred to as public health 3.0, is trying to push the field into addressing upstream change, like the social determinants of health. That includes on focusing on health systems change to better align our resources, to create efficiencies, and to incorporate changes into the infrastructure of the community. Both downstream and upstream interventions are important. But to really address those systemic issues, we've got to move into the primary prevention and focusing on strengthening our community partnerships. And I'll get more into that in just a second. But underlying all of this, of course, is policy. In order to create sustainable change, policy work must be woven into every bit of it. So that leads me into talking about the importance of cross-sector collaboration. It's a public health best practice because health does not occur in a vacuum. Our communities are made up of a myriad of systems that all play a part in impacting the health and well-being of those communities. So when it comes to sustaining and improving the health of a whole population, this can't be accomplished by one organization, one hospital, or even one health department. It requires multiple partners working together to address that policy, systems, and environmental change in order to really move the needle on health outcomes. So enter our health councils. This is why they are so important. So I'll talk about my catfish in a second, but health councils, they've been around since the 1990s in all 95 counties in Tennessee. The Department of Health provides direct support to our 89 rural and suburban counties. Membership and mission statements and all of those things vary from county to county. If you've met one health council, you've met one health council. But overall, it is a multi-sectored group. They all involve the participation of a diverse set of stakeholders. Health councils are in the ideal position to address kind of those underlying social determinants and health disparities at the local level, particularly through planning and policy implementation, because they advance that community expectation that certain issues be addressed. But in order to be successful in influencing real change, health councils have to develop a shared agenda. So you see my catfish here. They are all swimming in different directions. And it's catfish because we're in Tennessee and Tennesseans love catfish. That's the only reason I picked the catfish. But anyways, they're all swimming in different directions. Some may have similar destinations, but they're using different roadmaps to get there. Our health councils utilize a roadmap called the County Health Assessment. And this is the tool to get all of those catfish swimming in the same direction using the same roadmap. And by doing this, we're more likely to have an impact in our communities. Just a really quick briefer on the County Health Assessment. They're led by the County Health Councils. They start by using data to drive collaborative action. So they will have a set of secondary data about their community health outcomes, And we'll work on including the community voice by collecting primary data through listening sessions, through key stakeholder interviews and community surveys to to really gather some information on that community perspective of what the health issues are in their community. And we also really try to emphasize health equity throughout this whole process and the inclusion of voices of those folks in their community who have lived experience of health inequities. And they use all of that information to select some priorities. So most counties select 3 priorities to focus on in their county, and then they create a 3-year action plan from that. And these are really important to these little local county health assessments and the action planning process are super important to help to feedback up into the department-wide strategic plan so that we can create alignment across the state and improve health and quality of life for all of Tennesseans. In 2019, we had a cohort of 16 counties do their county health assessment. And these were the priorities that those counties chose to focus on. The most frequent, I would say the 2 areas that were most frequently chosen as a priority were mental health and substance misuse. And then after that, those were followed by ACEs. Obesity was certainly an area that I think several counties chose. And then 3rd grade reading level was the other highest prioritized issue. But because we're here talking about partnerships, I also want to emphasize that the county health assessment is really about the friends we made along the way. It's not a means to an end. It is a process that, yes, we want to get to an implementable action plan, but also it's all about strengthening the relationships and the partnerships of the people around the table, because we know that that is what leads to real change and real progress in a community. And I do have a listserv, and in just a minute, as soon as I stop sharing my screen, I will share a link for those who want to sign up for a listserv to stay in the know about what's going on with our county health councils. And I want to leave you with this, and I'll stop for see if there's any questions or comments. But I would like to share that our hope is that by helping these county health councils to build capacity, to strengthen relationships, including our relationships with UT Extension, that they will be an asset across Tennessee for improving health for the families and individuals in our communities. And I know UT is involved, or UT Extension is involved in several of our county health councils across the state through supporting programming and grants and things of that nature. So again, the last thing I'm gonna say is if you haven't yet, please go get vaccinated so we can all go get back to normal life and we can start meeting in person again. And I hope one day I can get out there and meet some of you. So I will pause there and see if there's any questions. And I will stop sharing my screen.
All right. And if there are no questions, you can also enter your questions in the chat and Jen can take a look at those. And we'll go on to Natalie, who will talk to us about coalitions for a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen. Jen is a new state level partner that I just met and reached out to, and she was familiar with UT and anxious to see more collaboration across the state with the County Health Council. So thank you, Jen, for hopping on today, and hopefully soon they'll get to meet Olivia, one of her coworkers who's on her honeymoon at this time. So we send well wishes to her. I'm going to share my screen, Corey. Let me get back to full screen. So can you see the full? Can you see my slides?
We can, yes.
Thank you. So you all know that engaging community partners is essential to Extension and expanding our programming and our PSE efforts and making lasting change in the county. And in Extension, we invest a lot of time in building partners and having meetings with our partners, but sometimes we don't get past the meet and sharing meetings. We tend to meet and report out, and then we go on our way. But today I just want to talk to you briefly about levels of collaboration really quick, and just encourage you to strengthen those partnerships with some of the information that I'll share. A group of researchers actually developed a measure of collaboration among partners, and looking at those measures will help us to strengthen those partnerships and look for ways to deepen those relationships. So the 5 levels that partnership relationships fall on are networking, coordination, and coalition and collaboration. I got my C's mixed up. Networking, cooperation, coordination, coalition, and collaboration. And so networking is the really basic. We go into a meeting, we see people, we won't have frequent communication with them. No decisions are made. We're still working independently. And then cooperation is where some of our 10-step coalitions actually fall. And we're still making decisions independent of each other. We just meet more regularly. We have formal meetings. We provide information to each other. Some roles are defined, but we're still not working together. And then with coordination, you become a little bit more engaged. You have frequent communication. You share information. You start to define the roles, and you start to make some decisions together. And although we use the word coalition a lot of our partnership relationships haven't gotten to the coalition level. And with the coalition level, all the members have the opportunity to participate in shared decision making. It's not always an extension project. It could be one of your partner's projects. There's frequent communications, and you've reached a common decision on the goals, and you agree on which way you're going to move the project forward. And that's something that one example is those county health councils, like working on the assessments together and then working on projects based on what the needs assessment findings were based on that data. And then finally, what you want to achieve is collaboration. And then members have developed a sense of trust. That leads to frequent communication, and it promotes a shared system to reach that goal or reach those projects. And all the decisions are made together and as a group. And as you look over these levels of collaboration, you should review your current relationships with your partners and new partners and identify gaps, and then maybe reach out to new partners to see what's missing and what needs to be filled. Not all, trying to go to the next slide. One of the tools that was provided to us in the Cornell PSC modules, online modules, is this chart. And it's the community map classification chart that goes with those levels of collaboration. And it's a tool that you can use to maybe assess your current partnerships and future partners. And Corey will post these for us on the site that she provides information to you following the meetings. Not all of our partners are ready to commit. They may not be interested in that project. They may not have the resources to help on that project, or they just may be in transition post-COVID, just getting back. And so don't be discouraged by this. Some partners will jump on board, some will not. You'll build a relationship, and then that person may leave the agency and you may have to start over. This is another great tool that you can use to assess collaboration readiness. It's the Collaboration Readiness Survey, and it's a great tool. There's the website on the bottom of the slide, survey.snapedpsc.org, and you can do assessment with your coalition members and just test their readiness and see where they are. but don't be afraid to reach out. And don't get discouraged if partners aren't ready to jump on board with the project. They may cycle back around and help on the next project. It's almost better to meet around a project versus meeting just to meet. Computer's slow. And so all of our partners bring different ideas, resources, and needs to the table. It's not always money, sometimes it's space, sometimes it's service, sometimes it's specific skills, or I have kills, I need to change that. Specific skills or talents, culture, time. So just look for different things that your partners bring to the table. You can outline them, you can map them, and again, see what's missing. One of the things that Belinda mentioned from Coffee County, one of her coalition members that helped her on her Well Connected project was a retired art teacher. So she came in and provided some of the work on the story trail that Belinda maybe couldn't do, but because of her art background, she was a perfect person for the coalition at that time. So next slide. So the CDC has developed several questions where you can use to periodically assess your relationships with your partner. And these are 4 questions that you can ask yourself as you look at your groups. What is the purpose of the partnership? Is it for implementation of a plan or help develop a plan? Is it an advisory group? What does success look like for that partnership? Are there specific activities or objectives for the partnership? What roles do members need to fulfill? What resources or skills do they need to provide to ensure the success of your partnerships? And what organizations, agencies, and leaders need to be represented to ensure success of that project? What access are needed? In a future meeting, you want to maybe address the following. Review relevant community data. Jen talked about the county health assessment. Dr. Frank and her team are available and always provide current data for your county, relevant data that you can share. You can review needs assessment results and then move forward on a project. Review and revise goals and outcomes. Determine if additional partners are needed. Identify resources that you already have and that current partners already bring to the table, and then determine roles, current roles and new roles, and then discuss communication strategies to stay in touch and to keep communication open is very important to keeping your strong partnerships going. And Corey, that is my last slide. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you, Natalie. I appreciate that. Right. So next, if I can get my slides going, we have Megan, and I'm gonna go ahead and give you control. And if you go ahead and click through, you should be able, your slides should be uploaded there.
Not seeing them on my side here.
Okay.
Oh, there they go.
Are you able to? There we go.
There we go. Okay.
Yay.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to basically tell our story in Meigs County today. And I guess this is a preview because we have a 5-part video series coming out here pretty soon that basically tells our story that's going to do a much better job than I do here. But I appreciate Jen and Natalie. I feel like it just kind of leads into what I was going to talk about. And our health council is called Meigs Matters, and it is the big umbrella for everything I do in the county. It's where all of our work comes from, basically. And so here's just a little bit of our county. There's where we're located in the state of Tennessee. We're completely bordered by the river on one side, and I've got our tigers on there because sports are super important to us, and that's going to come into play here in just a little bit. Okay. We have just over 12,000 people. We're ranked 80th in health rankings, and I am super excited about that. And you're probably wondering why. Because out of 95 counties, 80th doesn't sound that great, but we have been 94 for a while. We were 93, 92, then back to 94. We took a big leap this year. We hope that it is connected to the work that we're doing in our county under our Megs Matters umbrella with TNCEP and well-connected communities and several projects that we have going in the county. But we still have work to do because our adult obesity rate is 31%, our youth rate is 48%, we have a diabetes rate of 17%. But we have made some progress. We've put walking tracks at our Megs North and Megs South schools. If that picture, we're kind of a long, stretched out county, so there wasn't a safe places to walk on into the county. So we've actually built 3 walking tracks through our progress with Megs Matters. Through TNCEP specifically, we were doing education on sugar sweetened beverages, and we've tracked this over several years, and our number of students has dropped down, that drinking 1 or more a day has dropped down below 25%, and that's below the national average. So we're really excited about that. And we have become a 501c3 dedicated adult health council, and that's where Megs Matters comes into play. I'm going to skip over that a second. So here's who we have at the table in our group. EMS, our local, our city and county government, social services, schools, health department, faith-based. And when we got involved with a Well-Connected Communities project, and like I said, everything just works together for us. If you're in a smaller county, I don't know how it works in larger counties because I've never been in one, but in the smaller counties, we're all sitting at the same table. And if we had all these different groups that we work with, if we had a coalition for meeting each one, I feel like we would just get up and switch chairs. So we all work together. We put on those hats like, hey, now we're going to talk about this project. Now we're going to talk about that project. So when we got involved with Well Connected, one of the questions was posed was, are youth involved in your coalitions? And we're like, yes, they are involved. We do these projects and this project. So I'm like, no, are they involved in your coalitions? And I think I said yes 3 times. And I was like, yes, they're involved, until it finally hit me. Oh, are they involved in the planning and the implementation and the evaluation? And no, they weren't. So this kicked off having youth involved in our coalitions, and we headed to DC with a couple other counties, and the youth learned some things, and we came back, and you can see on the right there, they are presenting to our health council for the first time what they learned in DC. And I wanted to say this back on the picture, the slide that had who's all at the table there. I feel like one of the strongest things you can do for your coalitions is relationship building. I feel like we're in a people business, a relationship business, and had I not had strong relationship and worked on building a strong relationship with my coalition over several years, I don't know that I could just pop in and say, hey, we're going to add youth to our health council and to our coalition. What do you think? I don't know what kind of reaction would I've gotten, but because we had worked and we built those relationships, and and sometimes it takes like going to the sporting events and going to the different things and people seeing you out in public, because we had that strong relationship. They're like, cool, bring them on. We're excited. And so we met for our first youth and adult workshop. And one of the probably the most positive things we did was we set the tone for how youth and adults are going to work together. And the youth are on the left, the adults are on the right. And so what we said, very first thing is, hey, youth, so we're going to start out here, make a list of all the challenges you have working with adults. What do you find challenging about working with adults? And go to it. And hey, adults, what do you find challenging about working with youth? Let's go. And so they wrote a list, and the lists were long. And so I thought, oh no. But when we started to share, this just amazing thing happened. The youth were like, hey, adults, sometimes you don't listen to us. You just tell us what we need. And we're like, we do that. You're right. You're exactly right. And the adults were like, hey, you sometimes, you say you're going to be here and commit to something, and something else comes along, and you kind of like, oh, I'd rather do that. And so sometimes you're not the most dependable. And they're like, yeah, we get that. Sometimes we're not. And so we just went back and forth with that. And it kind of was like, maybe some open honesty happening. And so like, okay, all right, so now what are some great things? What are the awesome things about working with adults for youth? And what are the awesome things about, working with youth for adults? And so we ended on a positive note, and that just set the stage of like, okay, here we are. This is where we're at. Another thing we did was an activity called Take a Stand, and you put signs around the room on agree, strongly agree, disagree, strongly disagree. And you start out with something simple like chocolate ice cream is the very best ice cream. And you just go take your stand. And then why, you have to tell why. And of course we build up to some harder subject matter. And so what that says is, hey, we're all going to have some differences of opinions. We're all going to have, different experiences in life, but we're going to respect each other and be able to have an open conversation about it. And I feel like those two activities kind of set the stage for us youth and adults working together. So here we are, we did a community facilitated logic model, and youth and adults, we all ended up on the same page, which I thought was awesome. Like I didn't see that happening, but we targeted obesity, physical activity, and a center. We don't have a place in our county where we can come together and have cooking classes and exercise classes and just a general place for the community. So we went out and did a countywide needs assessment and showed up where we found people and where people at on a Friday night in the fall in Meigs County is football. So we took iPads, all this is pre-COVID, of course, went out to the football game and got the community's feedback, and the community was on the same page that we were. Wanted that recreation center, more physical activity opportunities, and access to healthy foods and targeting obesity there. I just added this slide just so to drive home my point of we need a place to have classes. Here we are having our community garden and taking inside and using what we grow to cook. And you can see us, there's even more people there pre-COVID spread out down the hallway trying to take turns in the kitchen there, but we're making it work right now. About having partnerships, I'm a split agent currently, FCS and 4-H. And so I knew about this, but if you can partner with your 4-H agent, another one of those things that just kind of fit a piece of the puzzle for us was using healthy living ambassadors in our program. And so our Meigs Matters Youth Advisory Board, some of those are also healthy living ambassadors. And so we were able to send a youth, this is the last 2 years, 2020 and 2019, to the Healthy Living Summit. I think we've sent youth for 4 or 5 years, and they have been bringing back the information to the youth that didn't go and to the adults and doing exercises with them. So that's been great for us. And one of the things that we are most excited about, and we're ready for COVID to be over with so we can complete this project, is the first year that the youth were up there, they came up with this project. At this time, it was called The Game of Life. The name has evolved several times since. But since we set the stage with the youth and adults, the youth felt okay, like they felt comfortable to come back and say, hey, adults, we have this idea, but we don't know how to make it happen. And so the adults listened and they're like, hey, I have some ideas. How about this? And the youth were like, that's good. It just went back and forth. Youth and adult have both put input on this. And they wanted to have some kind of a game, an event. I believe it was an adult that said, what about an inflatable maze? And eyeballs lit up. And so we made that happen. And so this is our monstrosity of an inflatable maze. When we ordered it, it said easily managed by 1 or 2 people. And you can see the first time we set it up, it took 10 farmers to put together or put back together there in the corner. But we have such great plans for this, like a whole curriculum based to go around this, but we're working on it, but we couldn't wait to get the maze out. So we've busted out, we've used the dice, the activity dice and the bean bags inside the maze just so we could be using it because it's eye-catching and kids want to be involved with it. But that's one of our big youth adult projects that we want to finish up. I do want to highlight this young man real quick. When we first went to Washington, D.C., he did not say a word the whole way up there. And I thought, oh no, how I'm supposed to be bringing him back and he's supposed to be a leader in the community and he's not talking. But after going through this project and being a part of it, all of a sudden he started talking and he's not stopped since. And I know that he would be comfortable with me saying, had he not been a part of this youth adult partnership, he wouldn't be the person that he was today. He just finished up his first year of college. National 4-H Center just grasped onto him and just loved the work that he was doing in Meigs County. They made him a National Doer of the Day. Usually I feel like adults were the ones that are like giving the kids opportunities, but he gave me opportunities because of he'd been so awesome. I got to go speak at a few things, including in Montana. We got to take our youth adult partnership talk on the road and went to Montana and spoke there, and it was a wonderful time. But again, another thing with the 4-H Healthy Living Ambassadors, they are working at our Boys and Girls Club. Not currently because of COVID, but we hope to get back in there. But that's a great partnership for us and has been a great partnership with our Megs Matters and 10 Step Coalition and all those things. But a new one that has popped up for us has been the Extension Health and Wellness Ambassadors, which I didn't intend for it to fit in, but then it just fit. It just fit right in with us. So another partnership, we've had 5 of our coalition members just complete and become certified health and wellness ambassadors. So it's given them more training, excuse me, healthy eating, exercise, and let me grab me a drink here. I'm trying to talk fast because I had so much to say. So one of the great things, one of our ambassadors that was just certified is actually our ag agent in our county. And so we are very passionate in our county about not working siloed, about working with FCS, working with agriculture and 4-H, and just doing everything together and being seen as united front, because we feel like that just strengthens Extension in a whole and says great things. So he just completed this and he'll be giving back 40 hours with our coalition and on a project that they've come up with. And that project, we're working on our maze. They've got some social media things coming up. We're going to do some pop-ups in our community. We've got a Walk Across Megs program coming up that's a little bit different than your usual program, but where we're excuse me, where we're headed is hopefully that facility, and hopefully we become a household name. Allergies. So this is the curriculum that I mentioned, Youth and Advocates for Health. You can find that on the Shop 4-H page. It's great. We use it a lot, especially when get our adult and youth together. And so if you have any questions about how to incorporate youth into your coalition, I'll be glad to answer those, help you. Reach out to me anytime.
Thanks so much. All right, and I see that we have Justin on the call. Justin, will you be, let me see, actually, let me change my controls here. All right. And Justin, are you?
I'm here.
Yay, excellent. And you should be able to share your screen. Do you need to share your screen?
I do.
Excellent.
And my internet, I think it should be fine. I've been testing it. I'm actually in Maryland this week. And so I believe my internet should be fine. I've been testing it out, but I'm not on screen because it was a little splotchy last Friday. But I've been fine here. So I'm opening up the presentation now. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Merrick. I serve as the Executive Director for the Center for Transforming Communities. We are located in the center of Memphis, Tennessee, right in the Binghamton neighborhood. We serve about, we serve 30 neighborhoods within the 240 Belt Loop. But what that means in practice is that we have about 10 organizers on the ground that take on work that's place-based. I always say place-based adjacent, because we help to build out like anchor strategies with the residents that are there, with some of the place-based models that are there.
Justin, just real quick, you're not sharing your screen yet.
Oh, it says it on my end that it's sharing. Okay.
Okay.
Let me try again.
Yeah, give it one more shot.
Corey, do you need to stop sharing?
Ah, thank you, Chantal. That is, now we can see it.
Oh, you can
Yep.
see it?
Good. Yes, thank you.
Okay. So I always kind of frame the work and understanding that our work is place-based, where we help to build out neighborhood and leadership councils. Some are already existent. So for us, that means that we are helping to align them towards systems impact. And our work has grown from a community development and community organizing model, and especially in light of COVID last year and the protests, that we've kind of evolved our work into a public health model. As we see public health being a way to create more long-term impact projects that have long-lasting economic benefit that allows for us to organize around the authentic voice of communities. So this presentation gives a little bit of insight as to how we're connecting the dot from public health into restorative economics. This first slide is taken from Barhide. That's one of our sister cities in the Bay Area that we do a lot of work with. And we're actually leading the work on what we're calling Act on Equity. It's a federal act towards getting federal funding to support public health infrastructures, much like HUD has done, or Choice Neighborhoods has done in the past, but where we actually can lean on federal support. So right now it's a coalition of 8 cities, including Denver, Bay Area, LA, New Orleans, Atlanta, Chicago, and Memphis. And so what this model looks at, you'll see, and I heard Corey, I think, reference at the beginning, upstream work. It shows how social inequities creates institutional inequities and vice versa, and how those inequities form the living conditions often that surround our more vulnerable neighborhoods. When we look at the physical environment, the social environment, the service environment, and the economic and work environment. And so I put a circle around where Center for Transforming Communities kind of specializes in. It's like, how do we start looking at these social inequities and creating tables that allow for us to collectively address some of those challenges and look at the root cause. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But essentially, as you go downstream, it shows how all of this work or collaboration or not collaboration, if it's silos, impacts health individually of our communities and residents that live there, from risk behaviors into disease and injury. And so it allows for us to really start identifying what's at the root of a lot of the conversations, and how do we all lean into more systems to stretch ourselves to be able to work towards the benefit of the clients and residents that we work alongside. So we came up with something that has really evolved over the past couple of years, and it's called Just Change. We had work groups already in our neighborhoods around health and environment sustainability. I would say, so Just Change is kind of a internal way that was easy for neighborhoods and residents to kind of latch onto in terms of what that means. But essentially, we formed these work groups to create work impact projects that they help to govern, that they help to drive, that they have self-determination in that process, is determining as what are the priorities of that neighborhood that they're in. What it means output-wise is really 4 focus areas: health, wealth, justice, and sustainability. And so we just launched it formally starting in April, where we showed, right, the connection that Memphis has specifically to a long line of work within the justice systems, from the civil rights movement of the 60s to the Niagara Falls movement of the 20s. And that we see at the very core of it some of the social health determinants, but more importantly, the social inequities that exist around race and economics, specifically racism and classism, right, as challenges that keep us from really having more generative solutions. And so the solution for us is like, how do we convene and how do we champion systems to be able to come together to work alongside residents? So the Just Change acronym stands for climate, health, arts and culture, next generation, which is youth, growth, which is economics, a lot of times around housing, and education, looking at the systems and community education so that we need to supplement that. So in doing this, we have a homecoming event that stands for Healing, Organizing, and Mobilizing Equity, where we were able to bring last year about 100, well, no, I'm sorry, a little less than that. I think we said 75 residents, maybe 80 residents from all of the neighborhoods that we serve. And then we brought about 50 organizations together. And we looked at what is a root cause of the challenges. And that's what Just Change actually came out. At the time, we just talked about health and environment. So we're looking at the top. Again, this is just another way to understand upstream to downstream, but looking at the symptoms.
I shared the Get Up and Move one with the homeschooler ones, and they
I think someone
really
else
liked that one.
came off. Thanks. So we're looking at the top systems, and then at the root are the causes. And often we find, right, that we may only be addressing the problem and not necessarily like the gaps, but not necessarily the root cause of that. And everyone knows that when you go to a doctor, at the end of the day, you don't want, medication that's treating the symptoms. You want medication that's, treating it all the way down to the roots. So we look at that as a form of equity. And so the easy way that we explain that work is that equitable transformation quite simply means engagement plus embodiment. And I always say that often those who have the resources to engage lack equitable embodiment, and those who have the equitable embodiment lack the resources to engage. So how do we bring those together in helping to develop the social capital to create transformative systems that function in more equitable ways? So we challenge residents and institutions to work together at the core, which we've heard a lot of that coalition building. We move at the speed of trust, and we say we've been the arc of transformation towards justice. Now, I think one of the things to name in the process that we lay out that I think works in tandem with what I've heard here on the call today is really having a very specific conversation around power and what that means in our neighborhoods, and specifically BIPOC neighborhoods, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and helping to center the work around that lived experience where they're helping to lead it. So we look at power plus creating infrastructure, like some type of governance council that allows for people to come together, a table, right? These are work groups. Those are all infrastructure that we create, and then we help to facilitate that towards creating systems impact. So I think very specifically, to give you examples of what I mean when I say creating power, it would be this: like in any of our hubs that we are in, or neighborhoods, we have monthly hub meetings, and then we have an organizer or connector that does small group meetings with them based off of their talents and affinities in terms of how they would like to self-organize. We do one-on-ones that before that process to identify the monthly meetings and small group meetings. And then out of that process comes events and different campaigns. And this is like a continuous process that allows for iterations from month to month to quarter and year to year, and helping to scale the work into larger impact projects that have longer economic benefit. And the thing that's very attractive to our public health model is that in many cities, they've created a 28, 30-year plan, much how urban planning works, where we can start to, go beyond the 3-year frames that we often see within philanthropy. That's why it's important to get state and federal funding to allow for the neighborhood voice to really have strong legs under them that they can depend on and rely on to build out their own governance model. So specifically in our monthly hub meetings, what we always ask our connectors and people that are interested in the work, are the residents setting the agendas? Are you using consensus building to come to a conclusion, at the end of the meeting? Or do you already kind of have a concept as to where you want to drive it? How iterative is it? When it doesn't align with residents or neighbors, what mechanisms do you have in place to allow for you to make those pivots to make sure that it's including the voice in the direction that neighborhoods want to take the work? Do people leave with takeaways, right, for the next meeting where they are actually leading that and coming back on the agenda to lead that the next time? And our one-on-ones and small groups, we're always constantly asking and learning, what are your gifts and talents, and how can we implement that in the process in a creative way that allows for it to be generative? So where there's a personal involvement and a collective responsibility that happens out of it. Are we offering them opportunities to engage outside of the meetings, right? So that it's something that's continuous, again, generative and movement building where more people participate. And are we identifying leaders and asking them to actually lead the meetings in context to the work and agendas that are being set? And then from that, when we do campaigns and events, Are we casting a wide enough net to engage people? Are we doing it physically, door to door, digital, social media? All of these become a big part of it. Sorry, this is in the way. So once we have infrastructure on the ground, as I mentioned, our approach to it at least is to kind of have 4 working groups in the neighborhoods. They don't have to have all of the working groups out of the 6 that we have, but climate, growth, education, and health are the main work groups often. We see arts and culture as a mechanism, storytelling, public narrative, right, that allows for the residents and neighbors to take ownership. It's a way form that we do cultural organizing. We start from story of self, story of us, story of now, that allows for all of the individuals to see how they fit in the larger context, which means there has to be someone that can facilitate around the equity piece. What does that mean? The spaces of privilege that are coming together, the spaces of access that are coming together, or the lack thereof, and how do we engage in a conversation that really allows for people to authentically champion who they are in that process. So it says at the bottom, while we grow, CTC will hold the arts and culture and next gen work, because that's how we want to grow into a 30-year framework, using arts and culture, using next generation, our youth, as leaders at the helm of that to create our impact projects. I'll give you specifics at the end as to what some of those look like. Champions are our facilitators that are experts in the field, right? That can work alongside all of the working professionals from the health or climate, education sectors. Neighborhood chairs are folks that our connectors identify, our on the ground organizers that have an affinity or interest in health or environment or education that can lead, the community meetings. And the connectors are the ones that are helping to create the lines, the social connectivity in between each of the meetings and one-on-one connections. So we look at this as a public health model. And I frame it from it's called a neighborhood health triarchy to build community power. I'm very intentional about naming that. I think often institutions come into communities and they do an excellent job of providing expertise. And they might even have a model where they build out economic, inclusion, where there's actually people getting paid to do some of those things. The part that I always point out is like, how does that build the base and the power of residents to continue meeting on their own? And how does it set them up to not just ending at the end of a grant, right, once something's done, but where they continue to do that, building the leadership capacity. And so I put a lot of that under community or cultural health. This frames in very broad terms, right, which allows for some interpretation, but community health in general, we look at that as access into systems, right, that we're moving from an exclusive into inclusive. So each of your organizations, are there residents that are somehow systemically connected, institutionally connected? Do they have a position? Are they part of an advisory board or something like that, that allows for them to continue to have governance in terms of the things as to how your organization moves in the neighborhood? We call financial health moving from like food co-ops, land co-ops, right? Where it's accumulation into like how we share those things in the neighborhoods and creating a neighborhood economy. And then cultural health is really how do we become less extractive and more generative, where we're using the skills and talents of the individuals that are in the neighborhood to propel the work and build the momentum, opposed to like, hey, we have a grant that's coming in, we want to do an urban agriculture, we want to do a farm, or we want, right? And this is excellent work, but does that process allow for there to be self-determination and agency from the residents' perspective that allows for it to be generative and edifying, self-edifying? What this means is when we look at poverty in general, in terms of how that has impacted Memphis specifically, that narrative hasn't changed over the past 50 years, right? Our poverty rate is still the same that it was 55 years ago. And so what we believe is that what will help to change that is the narrative, right? So narrative, we know that is data that we talk about, right? But stories that create narrative. And so often who is the storyteller and who is telling the stories becomes a really important part. And our approach to this process allows for the community to be the storyteller so that we have fresh narratives. An example of that I would give would be our partner. We have a partner with Overton Park, and often they champion the work to say, hey, Overton Park really helped to save, all of the trees and stuff that are there. That's true. And Overton Park also was an example 50 years ago as to where eminent domain was stopped, but it was stopped because there was a rich community there. And so Sam Cooper Boulevard that intersects right there actually came through several historically Black neighborhoods, Binghampton being one. But that narrative is not necessarily lifted up as to how that community was torn. And so once we have different narratives that are coming out, we have a different way of identifying and wrapping around what those healing parts are or pain points in the community to allow for neighbors to really be heard and help to lead the process as to what it means to do the healing in their communities. So we believe that changing the narrative coupled with coalition building, where we actually allow for neighborhoods to help lead that work, and getting neighborhoods to work with each other is a huge challenge as well, that we can learn from all of the different neighborhoods. And then implementation, where we're constantly providing learning circles or learning loops that allows for us to share the knowledge and create network to support. So these last 3 slides kind of show how 3 basic points, that triarchy going back to community power, social health leads to community power, essentially. That all of our monthly hub meetings, small group meetings, events, campaigns, and one-on-ones, if we do that in a continuous way, that's what builds the community power. The trainings that also might happen, the caucusing out of those events. So caucusing for us looks at race, right, as a root cause of some of the challenges that we have. And so how do we provide safe or sacred, often we can't say safe, but we can say sacred places where people can have that type of conversation and reprieve that allows for us to address the roots, which means equity audits. How do we lead to institutions doing equity audits? We help to facilitate those and then bring other partners in once there's a larger coalition that's interested in doing that work to create impact projects based off of how their own organizations can lead into more equitable practices. On the community side, it means healing circles, like one-on-ones that develop into arts and culture and just sharing of your stories that allows for intergenerational approaches and entryway points that maintains community interest. And then the last part is the financial health of our neighborhoods, which leads to economic power. So that literally means entrepreneurship, workforce development, land co-ops, food co-ops, investment trust, housing co-ops. And so the final example that I give is that we have one of our neighborhoods that has built a land trust, and they've actually acquired land. They've identified all of the areas that are blighted, right? These are all parts of working impact projects that have developed over the past 4 to 5 years. And so now they have options as they're acquiring that, it's scaling into other neighborhoods to create a citywide land trust, where one of our partners has 150 lots. And so they have to decide, like, hey, are we going to do land co-ops? Are we going to do, food, urban agriculture, green spacing, right? And it gives the residents the opportunity as to how the land can be developed around them and then sustained. So there's a lot of this. I tried, Corey, to break it down as simplistically. These are some kind of complicated subjects, but the last thing that I'll say is Audre Lorde says that our challenges are interconnected in the neighborhoods that we serve. And so our solutions within the systems have to be connected as well. And our challenges within the systems are interconnected, and our solutions within the neighborhoods need to be interconnected. And so we try to be a convening space that champions where all of those parts come together, that builds out the agency and self-determination of the residents we serve. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Justin. That was great. There's a lot of good information there. I will share my screen. We are going to run just a little bit over. I'm going to have Chantal go ahead and run through her evaluation pieces. Sorry, Chantal, clicked. So I can go ahead and click through for you.
No worries. Yeah, that would be great. Hello, this is Chantal. I work on the TNCEP and FNEP evaluation team, but for this case, just TNCEP and SNAP-Ed. As we've heard, this isn't simple, is it? It's clear as mud working with partnerships and coalitions. It's definitely a systems issue. We go from individual education, direct education, and going into this, policy systems and environmental changes. It's complex. And there's really not one right way to do it, right? We really have to understand, as Justin made very clear, like we have to understand all of the context in which we are working. And as community educators, it's important for us to really understand our communities. So, thank you for all the previous presenters and the information that they've given. Let's advance to the next slide. All of it applies to evaluation. When most people think of evaluation, maybe you think of it as something that happens at the end of a project. let's look at the project after it's over and decide whether it was any good or not. But truly, real evaluation actually needs to be an integral part of any project from the very beginning. One of the types of evaluation that I am particularly a fan of is participatory evaluation, which involves all the stakeholders in a project, those that are directly affected, those that are carrying it out, those that are indirectly affected. So really, the evaluation includes all of those stakeholders that are contributing to the understanding of it, applying it, and implementing and improving the work. So really, many of us may have heard the phrase, start with the end in mind, and that's really what evaluation is, especially for these larger, complex projects. And on this page, leading with data is really important. And as we've seen in several of the examples, starting with what we do know. What do we do know about our county? What do we do know about our community? With a critical emphasis on that qualitative data and going and speaking to the community members that are deeply affected, really understanding their perspectives and their lived experiences, and their perception of barriers is really, really, really critical to us being able to, develop a strategy and then execute it and evaluate it. So again, really just keep in mind, evaluation starts at the very, very, very beginning. So really, as an evaluation team, we really encourage you to practice data-driven decision-making. And as was mentioned previously, the evaluation office puts out these county health ranking sheets. So you can see an example of last year's quick that we prepared, but essentially gives you a snapshot of some of the demographics in your county, whether it's age or race, ethnicity, economic factors and contributors, other barriers to healthy behaviors, types of program participation. So really, we develop these health fact sheets in order to help you. And so if you utilize these health fact sheets in any way, we would love to know, what are we missing? Is there something that we can add to this to make it more usable for you as you're making these decisions in your communities? We also have a county health index spreadsheet that includes much more than this, and we'd be happy to share that information with you about your particular county. It's curated from several different websites, and so leading with data is really essential. Next slide. So evaluating these community partnerships, like I had mentioned before, participatory evaluation isn't simply just a matter of asking stakeholders to take part. It's really involving everybody, the entire group of people or the community in the project, and understanding what's being done and whether or not it's being effective. So instead of it being powerless people who are being acted on, really we're all beneficiaries, and we all become co-pilots and co-creators in our project. And that desired outcome of what are we hoping that this does, and how can we evaluate it over and over and over through the implementation of it to make sure that we are meeting real needs of those in the community, and making sure that the voices of those in our community are recognized and addressed. So the real purpose of evaluation isn't just to find out what happened, but really to use ongoing information to make your project better. So, this could probably, participatory evaluation and evaluation techniques could probably be its own webinar. And for the sake of time, I'll be brief, but, with evaluation, you definitely want to collect 3 pieces of information or 3 types of information. The first one is the process. So really, what's the process that your project went through to get started? What happened during your planning stages? What were the logistics? What were the activities? What were the things that were needed to get it set up and running? Who were your partners? What role did they play? Really an opportunity to define roles and responsibilities, which as you go through your project and implementation can support, accountability and provide continuous clarity and communication. The second type of data is your implementation data. So again, the actual day-to-day of what work you're doing and how are you running this? Did you do what you intended? Are we reaching our, the people that we proposed that we wanted to reach? What are the methods? that we're using. And then that third piece of data that we're always looking for you guys to collect as you're evaluating your projects is the outcomes. So, you know, those short-term and long-term outcomes. So what actually happened as a consequence of our project's existence? Did our work have the effects that we hoped for? Were there unforeseen effects, positive or negative? So you know, really, it's not just evaluation's purpose isn't just to find out what happened, but really use the information that you gather to make the project better and adapt to changes. And so I would encourage each of you guys as you're starting these projects to reach out to our evaluation office, and we would love to provide you with guidance and more information. But really, you know, evaluation isn't just a one-stop shop either. It has to continue as long as your work continues in order to keep track of the community needs, your coalitions. And I've heard from many of you that turnover is always a major concern. You know, how do we continue to adapt to the needs of our communities and our partners? And so really, evaluation is so critical in being able to, you know, adjust the project and make it more responsive and effective. And so really, evaluation can help you guys improve your efforts and make greater change. In this particular slide is just about putting information about your evaluation into Super. Many of you work with coalitions and have different partnerships. This is like a nitty-gritty detail. And again, if you have further questions about, you know, reporting into Super, you can reach out to us individually. But if any of your coalition members are true volunteers, and that means that there are a lot of your coalitions may include professionals who do this as part of their job, whether they're from the health department or from another nonprofit, that being part of this coalition is also part of their job. Those hours probably would not be counted, but anybody who's a true volunteer from the community, so any community members' time and efforts would be counted as volunteer hours in Super. Next slide. So like I said, you know, our evaluation team, like and maybe me more so in particular, I am so obsessed with community development and community work and working with coalitions and partnerships and really working towards those system changes. And so our evaluation team is available to help you with any and all of your efforts. Even if you need specialized needs assessments or help documenting a success story, or, you know, help, you know, obviously Natalie is always available to help navigate any, you know, soft skill intervention that you guys may need. But we are also here to partner with you to help you ensure that you're collecting the information and successfully able to document all of the work that you're doing. And that's underlined, all of the work. There's so much work that goes into this, and it really, you know, takes a lot of passion, and it's hard work. And we want to make sure that you guys are finding an easy way to collect and document that. As just an example, Sevier County TNSEP Coalition needed help developing surveys to evaluate one of their projects. And so we were able to help them with that. And, you know, whatever it is, come at us and ask us your questions. And we'd love to address your concerns. Next slide. This is our contact information. So again, my name is Chantal Rose, and that's my email address. And then Dr. Karen Frank, who is also widely busy leading our evaluation team, but is brilliant with what she does. And both of us are willing to help and assist you guys as you embark in this incredibly important work. I'd love to connect with anybody offline as far as discussing participatory evaluation, strategies and how-tos, and most of all, just keep evaluation at the front of your mind, along with everything else. But, you know, let's work together to document what we're doing. And best of luck to all of you who are currently, you know, neck deep in projects that you're working on. And for those of you who are looking forward to starting projects, you're not alone. We're here to support you, and we wish you all best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Chantal. Thank you to all of our speakers. I felt like it was a very informative group today, and I know a lot of you all struggle with coalition engagement and keeping partners interested in projects. So hopefully there were our speakers provided some good information today for you, or some new ideas to bring back to you, your partners and coalitions, or even ideas of new potential partnerships. So if you have any questions, we can go ahead and ask them now. All right. Well, I know we are running over, but if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me and I can reach out to our speakers. So thank you all very much for your time today. Thank you.